Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm your host, John Scott, with my co-host, Matt Essex, and you're listening to Wrestle Line, which is available on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Podcast Addict, and SoundCloud, and probably more than that, available on most devices, and of course, Androids, iPhones, all the rest of it. Lots coming up on the show. We're going to be talking New Japan, pro wrestling's biggest show of the year, Wrestle Kingdom, which took place just last, well, it depends where you watched it, but certainly it was last Friday for us in the UK that I got to see it. We also had, we're going to be talking about WWE's fresh start, they're calling it, what we thought about Raw from last night. And we're going to also have a little bit of update on Ring of Honor from Madison Square Garden. Got a little bit of news on that. Plus, All Elite Wrestling, the new promotion that's been certainly creating a lot of commotion in the news of pro wrestling. Unfortunately, though, Matt, we do have to start with some sad news. Of course, the passing of one of the most iconic figures within pro wrestling, certainly WWE, WCW, AWA, as a broadcaster, a huge character and a huge loss will be Mean Gene Okerlund. We found that news out very recently, and of course there was a good, I thought it was a decent tribute to Mean Gene last night on Raw. I think they did a really good job of that. I really enjoyed the video package they put together, and sad news, Matt. We of course we have a lot of this sometimes on our podcasts, but Mean Gene, Matt, I mean, for me, I have lots of memories as a child watching Mean Gene. He was, to me, the main interview guy. If there's ever a picture in my head of a guy doing an interview backstage, it's definitely going to have Mean Gene Okerlund in it. Any sort of standout memories for you, Matt, of Mean Gene when he was obviously performing his craft, growing up watching WWF at the time?
Oh yeah, I mean, back when I used to watch it on the VHS tapes, guaranteed he was always back there doing an interview of some sorts, and always there when like Ultimate Warrior was going on a crazy rant, or just back there with Rick Rude. All these guys had so many good, such good chemistry with all of these people, and I think it's something special about the voice that he had as well, that he could carry himself across, and even though he didn't look that intimidating, he definitely had a strong presence about him. So yeah, it is a sad loss to have him gone, and of course, so iconic, all of the times backstage, him and Hulk Hogan. Definitely, if any two people gelled, it was them two. So,
Yeah.
I can understand Hogan's heartfelt comments that we saw on Raw. So maybe people weren't expecting to see him back that soon, but at least he's actually honest about his relationship with Gene there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it made sense in many ways. I liked the T-shirt that Hogan was sporting as well. Of course, it was a throwback to when they were doing the whole tag stuff, when they were training together and working out together in those videos they used to do. I mean, my memories of Mean Gene, I mean, I always, as I got older, I would buy the VHS tapes as well, and they'd always have those like little things you'd never really see on TV all that much, and they had like they always had like those specials with him and the Brain, Bobby Heenan, when they used to go out and about. And back in the time when you had all the gimmicks, they'd go and, I don't know, they'd say they were in New Zealand seeing the Bushwhackers. And I mean, they ended up in all over the place with some of this stuff, even like Tuesday Night Titans, stuff like that. There's so much good material in that. So I recommend anybody, maybe you're a fan that's only been watching the last few years and you might not know much about Mean Gene Okerlund, but I definitely suggest type into your WWE network Mean Gene Okerlund. You'll find you should find very good variety of videos, and he was very good. He was very good at timing and comedic stuff, and like Matt said, you're dealing with a lot of different characters like the Warrior. He managed to keep it together when I'm sure a lot of other guys wouldn't have. But I was thinking, Matt, as well, to put it in perspective, there aren't too many guys in WWE currently, or in anything really, that I can really think of with the personality of Mean Gene. they're all very generic now. Those people that do the interviews, the people that do these YouTube shows, I don't even know them by names half the time. So I think Mean Gene stood out. I know they say you shouldn't be bigger than the star, but I think it helps the star if you're with someone like Mean Gene. So a definite big miss. Just to give you a little rundown of his career here. This goes to show how long he was actually in it. He was with the AWA between 1970 to 1984. So he had a 14-year spell with the AWA before he even got to the WWF. And of course, the AWA was he would then meet, of course, Bobby Heenan, Hulk Hogan. That's where those interviews were happening in the AWA long before the WWF. So definitely go back and check some of them out. They are available on the network as well. And then, of course, the WWF seems like it should be longer than this, Matt. But a run between 84 to 93 doesn't seem that long anymore. I don't know, maybe it's a sign of my age, but it doesn't seem a massive gap. But he was so synonymous for such a long time to me in my sort of childhood memories. But it seems odd that it was only sort of 84 to 93. And of course, amazing running that, so many moments, as I've said about. And then, of course, he would go from 93 to 2001 into WCW. And again, pretty much him, Bobby Heenan and Hulk Hogan, they all went to these places together. They started in the AWA, but they pretty much left all around the same times to go to the next promotion. And of course, Bobby, he would eventually come back to the WWF. He made a cameo in the Gimmick Battle Royal. He done some commentating there. I think if you remember, he was out there with Bobby Heenan, which was pretty cool. And of course, then he pretty much got a gig back in the WWE as far as their network stuff. He done a lot of stuff on that. I know he done Story Time, if anybody's watched that. He was also a part of the Legends House he was involved with, which is still available on there, probably worth a watch for anybody that hasn't seen it. But yeah, it was definitely a huge influence on so many people, throughout his time, no doubt about it. I'm kind of glad that he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, that he got that moment. Of course, that was in 2006, and of course that was by Hulk Hogan, would induct him that year. So kind of cool that he got that run. I'm glad that he, was around to get that. So many times we hear of people, in the wrestling business, especially WWE, passing, and you just think to yourself, that they should be in the Hall of Fame. You just wish they could have been around to have that experience, have that moment for themselves. I'm glad, at least with Mean Gene, he's got that. Very sad news, though, of course, and of course, we go on, but. So anyway, sorry to start with a bit of sad news there, Matt, obviously. Gonna now throw us back here, Matt. A few days ago, in fact, myself and Matt, we watched New Japan's Pro Wrestling's Wrestle Kingdom 13. Of course, the biggest show of the year for New Japan, and it's such an amazing build-up, Matt, for New Japan. It seems like it takes such a while to get to this point. But what did you make? I mean, I don't want to go into every single match, Matt, but obviously we sat and watched it together on a Friday afternoon. Had a couple of beers each, and just sort of watched it pretty much as a fan. I don't think I was watching it too much as a sort of what we do here. So it was kind of cool to just let my hair down and just watch some wrestling. But obviously I don't watch the product as much as I'd like to. I do watch shows, but I don't get to see enough of it. But a lot of people felt this wasn't the best Wrestle Kingdom, in sort of years gone by. However, that's in New Japan standard. If you put that against sort of what we're used to, Matt, it's sort of gold for us, because we don't get to see a pure wrestling show like this, and it was just literally wrestling with a few crazy antics in between. I'll say that the entrances certainly certainly caught my eye a few times. But what did you make of just, how we was watching it, Matt? And what did you make of the experience of seeing it? I know you've seen Wrestle Kingdoms years gone by, but I mean, for you, the show, did you enjoy the show? Was it a show that, you thought was good? Like all round, or?
Well, of course, I think for someone like me, it's like you see the WWE product a lot. I mean, a lot, because there's so much of it crammed into a week these days. You just gotta just somehow get through it. So when something like Wrestle Kingdom comes along, it's almost like a little holiday. You just go off and you see that, and it's something completely different, and the pace is all different, and even the moves, like some moves that they don't allow you to do in the WWE,
Yeah.
do New Japan. Like it's like a welcome little break. I kind of feel like it is a great product, and I wouldn't take anything away from it. It's just I feel like it's better for me seeing it like that, like a little break, like a one-off now and then thing. Just makes me kind of appreciate it more. I feel like if I watched it week in, week out, maybe some of it might be lost on me. Maybe I'd be a little too accustomed to the pace and the work that they put in. I think going back to WWE, you kind of you get to see what they really do different out there, and it was really good. I mean, I say WrestleMania has got something to live up to now after that. I mean, I'm sure the higher ups from WWE were watching it thinking, hopefully they're not going to go too all out this year. And, if the Japanese fans are saying that it wasn't one of their best, it must be a pretty tough crowd to please out there.
Yeah, I guess so. I think that it's kind of caught a standard now, Wrestle Kingdom. I think one of the big criticisms that I was, when I started to see all the comments, was the fact that because they were trying to get bigger and expand, they were streaming a lot more different places. And by doing that, it meant that they had to cut down a little bit on the match lengths. And apparently that sort of threw people out. I think especially in the tag match, a lot of people were saying, it ended too fast. There wasn't much story told. But at the same time, believe it or not, the main event was the longest in time length of all of them. So, it's sort of chop and changes. Of course, there was a pre-show match as well. Instead of a battle royal that we're used to, there was actually a gauntlet match. And that had, of course, David Finlay in it. He gets a lot of big reviews, that guy, and I've seen him work a few times. I don't know if you've seen much of him, Matt, but he's pretty much cemented in New Japan at the moment, David Finlay. And also it involved Marty Skirtle that was there as well, because I was thinking, where were they? But they were involved in a sort of gauntlet match, number one contenders match on a pre-show. But what I like about it as well, obviously there was 8 title changes, which was quite bizarre. I thought, really, for the same sort of show, I thought that was quite a lot. But kind of cool, I suppose, at the same time. But what I liked about it is the fact that there's still, you got Harry Smith out there. You got all these sort of stars that they don't make it on the card. You have got to be something quite exceptional to get on this card these days. And I like that about it. I feel like, if there's one criticism I do have of WWE's WrestleMania, it's that I just think they seem to just make spots up to get everybody out there. And I wish they would go back to the days of, and we've reviewed it on our show before. We've done WrestleMania 19, and they had 7 matches that night. And I know it sounds like that's not a lot, but it actually was a lot. We had 5 really good main event quality matches, and they all got a really decent time because they weren't rushing through 15, 16 matches. And you just think now WWE, they've got even more titles than ever. Is it going to be a case of just too long? And the thing is, I've got to say, I know people might say about Wrestle Kingdom, they give the distance and they always give them match time. WrestleMania, it goes on forever nowadays. I feel like that's longer, but it's certainly not longer in match length half the time. It's all the other stuff. It's the entrances and all the rest of it that they and the video packages they seem to spend more time on. So I do think there's something to be learnt from this. I did just like watching the wrestling. It was fascinating that, and I think this is one of the big differences, Matt. I don't know what you think about it, but obviously the entrances in New Japan, they are quite elaborate at times. I'll give them that. And of course we saw that. What was that? Back to the Future. Very bizarre thing.